Good evening, everybody. Welcome to our next session here at BBI. We're doing our session on an introduction to singing, and tonight is the second lesson. But before we do our lesson on singing, and as we study breathing when we sing, we've got to do our hymnology. Now, the song we're going to do this evening is I Need Thee Every Hour. This deeply personal hymn was written out of the daily experiences of a busy housewife and mother, Annie Hawks, in the year 1872. Annie Sherwood Hawks was born in Hoosick, New York on May the 28th, 1835. At a very early age, she displayed a gift for writing verse, and by the age of 14 was contributing poetry regularly to various newspapers. In all, she wrote more than 400 poems. Though this hymn text is the only one that's still in common usage. In 1859, Annie Sherwood married Charles Hawks, and 3 children were born into this home. For much of her life, she lived in Brooklyn, New York, and was a member of the Hanson Place Baptist Church, where for 8 years, Dr. Robert Lowry, himself a prominent gospel poet and musician, was her pastor. Mr. Lowry recognized Mrs. Hawks' poetic gifts and encouraged her to use these abilities for writing hymn texts. Annie Hawks has left the following account regarding the writing of her one immortal hymn. One day, as a young wife and mother of 37 years of age, I was busy with my regular household tasks during a bright June morning in 1872. Suddenly I became filled with a sense of nearness to the Master, and I began to wonder how anyone could ever live without Him, either in joy or in pain. Then the words were ushered into my mind, and these thoughts took full possession of me. I need Thee every hour. Later, Mrs. Hawks showed these 4 stanzas to Dr. Lowry, who was very much impressed with them. Lowry quickly composed the music for the verses and also added a refrain. Dr. Lowry had the conviction that a refrain or chorus was necessary for any hymn to give it completeness, as well as to provide an opportunity for everyone, especially the children, to be part of the congregational singing. The hymn first appeared in a small collection of hymns prepared especially for the National Baptist Sunday School Association Convention held in Cincinnati, Ohio, in that same year of 1872. It was sung by the delegates with great appreciation. The following year, it was included in a new songbook, The Royal Diadem, compiled by Lowry and William Doane, with the heading, Without Me, You Can Do Nothing, John 15, verse 5. Later, the song was widely used and popularized by Ira Sankey in the large Moody Sankey campaigns, both in this country and throughout Great Britain, where it had become a favorite with many of God's people. 16 years after her writing this text, Mrs. Hawks experienced the death of her husband, which she has written cast a shadow of great loss over my life. Mrs. Hawks left this account regarding the spiritual help she received from her own hymn during this very difficult period of her life. I did not understand at first why this hymn had touched the great throbbing heart of humanity. It was not until long years after, when the shadow fell over my way, the shadow of a great loss, that I understood something of the comforting power in the words which I had been permitted to give out to others in my hour of sweet serenity and peace. The composer of this music for the text, Dr. Robert Lowry, was recognized and honored as an outstanding Baptist minister in his various pastorates throughout the eastern areas of our country. He was born in Philadelphia, March the 12th, 1826. Served Baptist churches in Pennsylvania, New York City, Brooklyn, New Jersey, and was a professor of rhetoric at Bucknell University for a 6-year period. He was known as a man of rare administrative ability, an excellent preacher, and a thorough Bible student. Music and hymnology were his favorite studies, though he was always thought of them as avocations. Later, however, with the death of William Bradbury in 1868, the Big Blow Publishing Company selected Robert Lowry to be its music editor. In typical fashion, Lowry applied himself vigorously to the study of music and became highly knowledgeable in the field. It is said that the quality of his publications did much to stimulate and improve the cause of sacred music in this country. Although Robert Lowry had no formal training in music composition, he has contributed many fine hymns to our evangelical hymnals, and has compiled and published a great number of songbook collections, especially geared for Sunday school use. From the soul and pen of this dedicated pastor-musician have come such other gospel hymn favorites as Christ Arose, Nothing But the Blood, and Shall We Gather at the River. He also composed just the music for well-known hymns like All the Way My Savior Leads Me, Savior Thy Dying Love, and the stirring text by Isaac Watts, We're Marching to Zion's. What a great, rich history behind the hymn, I Need Thee Every Hour. And it is, in fact, the hymn because it is directed to Him, to God. So it is not just a gospel song, it is an actual hymn. Okay, an intro to sing. Lesson number 2 tonight. We're going to look at breathing. Now, I passed out some music for you. What we're going to do with this is we're going to learn how to go through and notate points of breathing where everybody collectively should take a breath as a choir to help you be familiar with how to make these notations, where and when to do them. 90% of good singing is good breathing. Because if you don't have any breath, you can't sing. Because singing is produced when air passes through the vocal cords and they vibrate. So 90% of good singing is good breathing. There are no magic tricks to it. It simply comes with hard work. If you want to be a good singer, the first thing you must learn to do is to be a good breather. And you would be amazed at how difficult it is for some people to breathe correctly. If you want to be a good singer, you need to learn how to breathe right first. In order to achieve a steady, unwavering tone, you must learn proper breathing habits. Diaphragmatic breathing is where it all begins. Your diaphragm is a large dome-shaped muscle that divides the body between the lungs and the abdomen. In your chest cavity here, it is at the bottom of your lungs, so it's about right in here. Your lungs naturally expand down, not out. So if you see somebody that takes a deep breath and they go, they're not taking as deep of a breath as they could because they're not allowing their lungs to expand downward. That's the way your lungs work. Therefore, in order to breathe properly, you must use your lungs properly. If you see people going, then you know that they don't know what they're doing. Don't listen and don't follow somebody that takes a deep breath by expanding the chest and the shoulders. Okay? This shouldn't move, but out, and this should move out so that the lungs go down. In order to have good breathing, you must learn to use your diaphragm when you breathe. It is the single most important muscle that is used in singing. If this doesn't get tight, if this doesn't move when you sing, you're not singing properly. If you focus all of your attention here, eventually you're not going to be able to do very much of anything. Because this is the one part that has to be relaxed. This is where the support comes from. So you'll often hear me use the term having breath support. And you do that by supporting your breathing through your diaphragm muscle here. You need to learn how to fill all of your lungs to its fullest capacity, even the lower recesses, and then learn how to control the flow of air as it comes out. Besides learning how to use your diaphragm, and I'm actually going to show you that here in a second, but also aside from knowing that you have to use your diaphragm to do breathing, posture has a lot to do with it too, whether you're standing or whether you're sitting. Now, I don't have a chair. I have a chair. Here we go. Let me use this chair right here. If you're going to be sitting when you sing, move my podium out of the way. It is never acceptable to sit and sing with your back against the backrest because it does not promote proper posture. You're too far back, therefore you can't properly expand your lungs. Even in practice, you must encourage your people to have the appropriate seating posture. It's okay to practice sitting down as long as they're seated correctly. If they're not going to sit correctly, make them stand up. Teach them discipline. If they're not going to do it right, then make them do it right. Anything that's worth doing is worth doing right. So when you sit and you sing, you scoot away towards the edge, away from the backrest, so that your posture can be more buoyant, more erect. You want your shoulders to be tall and straight, and you want your torso to be so that your lungs can fully expand. When you breathe, you must make sure that this is the part of your body that moves. So when you breathe, that this comes out. When you exhale, it goes in. It moves out of the way to allow the lungs to expand, and it pushes in and forces the air from the bottom up in order to exhale. This is not the part that does the movement. That's not it. That's the way that it works, okay? So posture is where it begins. It is the main ingredient for good breathing because it allows your lungs to expand as they should. So make sure your shoulders are level, and then place your hands just above your waist. Everybody do that. Everybody slide your chairs back away from your table. Now you're going to sit towards the end of your chair. Do not rest your back against the backrest. Be away from it and sit up. Make sure your shoulders are level. And then you're going to place your hands just above your waist right here in your abdomen, towards the bottom of your rib cage, right here in the middle. I guess a good way to do it is just find your navel and just center your fingers right above it, right here in the middle. When you inhale, you want to push your hands out. Focus on moving your hands. So when you breathe in, push your hands out. When you breathe out, push your hands in. This moves. This does not. You stay upright, you inhale. You exhale. Inhale. Exhale. Tension comes here. If you don't feel this getting tight, you're not focusing your attention at the right spot. If this is not moving, you're not focusing your attention at the right spot. When done correctly, you will feel air coming into the lower recesses of your lungs. I can feel it all the way down to here. Okay? You want to keep your chest raised, just like they teach you when you're standing at attention in drill in the military. You want to have your chest up. You don't want to be sitting there like that because you're not going to be able to expand. You're already limiting your ability. So make sure you have good posture. Your chest is up so that your abdomen and your diaphragm can move out. Okay? Whether you're playing a trumpet or any other kind of wood-oriented instrument or you're singing, this is how you breathe. You want to know how to play the trumpet without blacking out? Learn to breathe properly. If you breathe from here, you'll black out. I promise. You'll get lightheaded and you'll pass out. If you breathe from here and sing from here even, you'll learn how to control your breath better. You must maintain muscular control though without being tense. You don't want your abs to be super hard because then you'll be focused on keeping your abs tight rather than singing. So you want to learn to keep tension without being tense. You understand what I mean? You want to learn how to have control without being tight. So it is always good to do some ab workout exercises to help maintain a little bit of control here so that you can focus on that. But at all times, remember, you must keep your throat relaxed. If your throat gets tense, you'll start to do damage to your vocal cords. They'll start to cramp because they're muscular too. And just like these muscles can cramp and you can damage these. The greatest way to preserve the instrument God gave you naturally is to learn how to operate it properly. Breathing. The proper way to reach a low note is to learn how to use breath. The proper way to maintain or to achieve the ability of reaching higher notes is with breath, not with tensing up and trying to get up there, trying to get down low like that. That's not how you do it. You must use air in order to go higher or lower. You use air. The more air, the lower you go though, the more air it takes to vibrate those chords, the more control it takes. Your vocal cords vibrate much higher with a higher pitch. Just like a guitar string, the tighter it is, the higher the pitch. The lower the pitch, the looser the string, and the fewer vibrations that it takes. On a piano, you have your bass strings that are, really thick. They vibrate maybe 70 times a second. As you go all the way up to the end, you'll have strings that vibrate thousands of times a second because of how tight they are. The tension is what determines the pitch. Same thing with your vocal cords. But if you don't have breath in the right amount, you won't be able to sing. You won't be able to sing as well. Breathing is actually child's play. If you'll watch a baby, lie a baby on its back, or watch a baby breathe at all, and it'll breathe correctly. See, just like living, we develop bad habits the longer we're on the earth. Even in our breathing. We breathe incorrectly the longer we live. Babies, breathe correctly. And if you don't know how to breathe correctly, the best thing you can do is lie on your back, and you'll be forced. The only way to get air in is to breathe properly. Try laying flat on your back on the floor. Not here, but when you go home, try laying flat on your back on the ground and try it. The only way you'll be able to breathe properly is you'll see this go in and out, because you're allowing your diaphragm to move for your lungs to expand, because you have no other way to let air in, because you can't use your bad habits when you're lying flat on your back. When a student is first learning how to play a trumpet, a tuba, a trombone, or well, probably not a tuba, it'd be flat as a pancake if you tried. But a trumpet, if you're trying to learn how to play the trumpet, the first way to learn how to properly do it is to lie flat on your back and learn how to play that way, so that you develop the good habit of breathing from here, breathing from your diaphragm, okay? So learn to breathe like a child, and you'll breathe properly. Breath control is extremely important because while you're singing, you must learn how to let as little air as necessary escape during each word. Otherwise, you'll need to take more breaths than you need to. What you need to learn to do is conserve your breathing and be able to sing properly. You don't want to be able to sing songs like Amazing Grace, how sweet the sound. You should be able to go, Amazing Grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. I once was lost, but now I'm found, was blind, but now I see. One breath, how about that? It can be done. I almost didn't do it though, I barely did. Learn breath control. I didn't even get a good breath. I could have done that if I really tried. But while you're singing, learn to let as little air escape as possible during each word. Keep your muscles steady around the waistline. It's important that you focus on keeping your breath supported. Not squeezing to try to get your abs to pop out and rip, but you're trying to keep tension and keep it tight so that you have good, proper support. There must be a feeling of firmness but not rigidity in your lower abdomen walls at all times. Should be that you have enough tension there that if you were singing and somebody poked you in the belly, it should not change the volume or the pitch. Unless you're ticklish. And you go, and you'll never know what's going to happen then. You never know. And they're going to start giving everybody cinnamon rolls before it's over with, and crescent rolls and stuff. Amen. That's good stuff. So practice so that your lungs can get filled to the very fullest capacity. Learn to keep your firmness here. When you sing, remember you must have good proper posture so that your abdomen can allow the lungs to expand. You have to get that diaphragm out of the way so that you can properly breathe, okay? Key factors when learning how to breathe properly when you sing is that you must anticipate the phrase difficulty ahead of time and take a deep breath before the beginning of that particular phrase. Learn to pace and to conserve yourself and don't let all your air out in the first few notes. Learn to let out as little air as possible so that it conserves it. Hold back by using your body, not your throat. This area controls how the air comes in and out, okay? Also remember the key factors in breathing when you sing is that you must maintain a very relaxed throat and a relaxed jaw regardless of how high or how low the pitch is. If this is getting tense, if you find yourself doing this number when you're singing, you're doing it wrong. This should never move. No matter how high or how low, this should never do this. You don't do that to get the high notes, you don't do that to get the low notes. It doesn't change. It actually makes it harder because when you do that, you cut off the airflow. When you do that, you make it difficult to reach the notes and for them to vibrate properly. Keep your head still and allow the breath to make the movements, okay? Now when you're marking songs, let's see. I've got my copies here somewhere. What did I do? Yeah, here we go. All right. Let's take out the first song. Let's look at Under the Blood real quick. Look at Under the Blood real fast. Now when you're marking a song, make sure that you're using by putting a small tick or like an apostrophe indicating where a breath is supposed to be taken in. You want to follow the punctuation marks of the music because it gives you and builds your phrases throughout the song. You want to sing a song like it would be read. Now unfortunately, some people were never properly taught how to read. They were taught how to say the words, but there's a difference between saying words on a page and reading words on a page. For example, if I were to read this, some people would read it like this. The burden of sin has been lifted as far as east is from west. They're buried without remembrance in God's sea of forgetfulness. I've been to Calvary's fountain. My name is written above. When Satan rails accusations, I tell them they're under the blood. That's how some people read. But there's punctuation for a reason. For pauses, stops, continuations, etc. The burden of sin has been lifted as far as the east is from the west. They're buried without remembrance in God's sea of forgetfulness. I've been to Calvary's fountain. My name is written above. When Satan rails accusations, I tell him they're under the blood. That's the difference between reading and just saying the words on the page. listen to me sing the song without using the punctuation. Is that E flat? Okay, watch the difference. The burden of sin has been lifted as far as east is from west. They're buried without remembrance in God's sea of forgetfulness. I've been to Calvary's fountain. My name is written above. When Satan rails accusations, I tell him they're under the blood. Now, how many of you would say that that was a pretty decent job of singing the song? Decent. Listen to this. See if you can tell the difference. The burden of sin has been lifted as far as east is from west. They're buried without remembrance in God's sea of forgetfulness. I've been to Calvary's fountain. My name is written above. When Satan rails accusations, I tell him they're under the blood. They're under the blood. They're under the blood. Now, what was the difference between the first time I sang it? Now, some of you are going to go, I didn't hear a difference at all. I know. But if you paid close attention, what was the biggest difference between the first and the second time I sang? I did. I used phrasing as I sang. When a punctuation mark came, I observed the punctuation mark when I sang. Most of the time, people just blow right through them. They don't care, just like when they read. I had a student in class that I was having them to read a verse out of the Bible, and they were reading the Bible but never observing the punctuation. You know how in English, when you come to the end of a sentence, if it's a period, most of the time your voice drops because it is signaling, I'm done. New thought. Here we go. But sometimes people just maintain that same pitch or even go up as if they're asking a question. But they're not. Are they? I don't know. Could be. It's all about the way that you articulate your voice and how you phrase what you say. But it also applies in how you sing. And breathing is the basis in how we make sure we phrase what we sing. If I take out your pencil, if you got one, you should have one, right? If you don't have one, prick your finger and use your blood and we'll get to it later, okay? Do what you gotta do. I'm just kidding. If you got, take your pencil and look at the first line. We're going to go through. What's the first part or the first piece of punctuation you see in verse number 1? It follows what word? West. You should not take a breath at all until you get to the word west. So, the burden of sin has been lifted as far as east is from west. Breath. So put you a tick above. Now, not above the word. You want to put it above the grand staff, like where that B flat chord name is. Put you a nice little tick, an apostrophe up there to let you know. Go and breathe in right there. Okay? The burden of sin has been lifted as far as east is from west. Breath. They're buried without remembrance in God's sea of forgetfulness. Breath. So there you go. No breath at all for the second line until you get to ness. Ness. It's a quick breath though, because listen, it's going to go like this. In God's sea of forgetfulness, I've been to Calvary's fountain. Breath. Because you got a period, okay? My name is written above. Breath. Why should I take a breath after above? There's two reasons. Because there's a comma, but there's also a rest. There's an eighth rest there. Take advantage of rests to breathe in. I'll put that in your notes. If you see a rest, guess what? Take advantage of it and breathe. You don't know when your next one's coming. When Satan rails accusations, breathe. I tell him they're under the blood. Breath. They're under the blood. Okay? So that should be your ticks that you put, your places to breathe, notating through the verse. Now look at the chorus. They're under the blood. You going to breathe or not right there? That's going to be your choice. What are you going to do? You going to hold it out?
Altos can't breathe.
Or are you going to breathe? You could.
Really?
Shortly. With a, that's about it though. That's when you learn how to full very quickly. You could do it this way. Tell me which one you think sounds better. They're under the blood. They're under the blood. Or they're under the blood. They're under the blood. better. I like the elongated feeling of it because you're going to hold that note out. Don't cut it off. Just go ahead and hold it out. But there are going to be some people that won't be able to do it. That introduces the next point. Look number 8 on your outline. That point is called staggered breathing. Staggered breathing is a technique that is used for elongated holds. Each person takes a breath when they need to, as the entire section or choir holds a note out. You don't change the way that you look, though. You're not going to indicate to anybody you're taking a breath. You're going to fade out, breathe, fade back in. For example, they're under, let's say they're a smoker, and they just absolutely have no breath control whatsoever. They're under the blood. They're under the blood. That's the way they're supposed to do it. You want to fade out?
As long as it's not a solo.
I know, right? Do not do that if you're a soloist. If you cut it off, don't come back in. Don't go, they're under the blood. Don't do that. Oh, my soul, don't do that. If you're done, be done. Staggered breathing only works in a choir setting. It don't even work in a quartet, okay? Only in a choir setting. That means, come here, Scotty. Jason, you too. I'm going to stagger breathe. Y'all going to hold it out, okay? Let me give you your E-flat chords again.
I'm not warmed up.
There. We're just going to sing the melody together. You ready?
Okay.
Now you're going to hold it out, and I'm going to come back out. I'm going to go in and out. You ready?
All right.
They're under the blood. They're under the blood. That's good. Okay. Now, was it as noticeable that I did that because these two were still holding it out? Now I made it look like I was breathing, but if you do it right, it's going to sound more like this. You ready? They're under the blood. The point is, the more people you have, the more people can breathe, the longer the note can hold out. You want to hold it out as long as you can? Without passing out?
Without passing out.
Without passing out? No, don't worry about it. Go ahead and sit.
We don't judge it.
So, the idea behind staggered breathing is learning how to elongate the overall sound while everybody sings, but nobody passes out because they're holding it too long. Don't be afraid to take a breath if you're holding out a note in the choir. Just don't everybody do it at the same time. Make sure that your mouth continues to hold the syllable that's being held. Fade out, take your breath, fade back in. The objective is for no one to know that you're not holding the note out for the full count. Go back to the beginning of the chorus. Let's work the rest of the chorus and make our notations for our breath marks. That's what they're called, okay? Breath marks. They're under the blood. They're under the blood. Breath. On that rest right there. Ready? Christ did for me what I could not do. There. Now there's a punctuation mark. Better breathe right there. Phrase it. Christ did for me what I could not do. There under the blood. Okay? So you have a breath after do and then a breath after blood because you got to rest there. Just like the Passover in Egypt's land. Breath. It took the blood to save man. Breath. Washed and made clean. I'm just... Now you may not want to breathe there because you're going to go 3 times right there. You'll exasperate yourself. So don't do that. You'll hyperventilate. So do it like this. Just like the Passover in Egypt's land, it took the blood to save man. Washed and made clean, I'm justified when God sees the blood. I did not breathe after clean. I simply signified the comma. Because you're going to be breathing at land. You'll breathe that after land, man, clean, and then blood. You're going to take 4 breaths within 2 lines. You don't need that many. Just like the Passover in Egypt's land, breath. It took the blood to save man, breath. Washed and made clean, I'm justified when God sees the blood. Okay? So that's the way you mark breathing in a song. Let's look now at... pull out God is Still Good. Okay, God is still good. So here's the way the song goes. A flat, all right? As I look back on all of my days, so many times in so many ways, I have been blessed, and all I can say is God has been good. Now, We don't do the yes he has when I typically do it. Now Jerry does at Goshen. They do yes he has, but I don't. I'm sorry. You can do it like you want to though, because you're the choir leader. Sometimes the night brings sorrow and pain. Sometimes the tears fall like the rain. But through it all, He's never changed. God is still good. Okay? So let's look at your rests. Not your rest, but let's look at your breaths, where you should be breathing throughout the verses here. Now, if you'll pay attention, sometimes you'll breathe at certain spots in the first verse that you shouldn't in the second verse. Pay attention. Make notations accordingly and tell your choir, don't breathe here, hold that note. And do not be afraid to remind them when they're singing, hold it, and then cut them off. Stick that hand out, let them know, don't you do it, don't you do it, hold it. Okay, now, okay? Try to keep them in line. If you're going to be the director, then by all means direct them, okay? As I look back on all of my days, breath, so many times in so many ways, breath. I have been blessed, and all I can say is God has been good. Now that breath is up to personal interpretation. I would probably take a small breath, because you got to hold that good out, okay? So breathe after so many ways, breath. I have been blessed, and all I can say is God has been good. Because you don't want that good to be strained. When people tend to strain, they fall flat. So if they're going, God has been good, and they're squeezing every little bit of air out that they have, you know you should have took a breath. So you always want it to maintain, God has been good. Sometimes the night brings sorrow and pain, breath. Sometimes the tears fall like the rain. But through it all, He's never changed. God is still good. Okay? So basically throughout that song, breathe when you have a comment. Look at the second verse. Now notice that the first verse on this song starts with a downbeat, but the second verse starts with a upbeat. Now there have been times when I let Him down, made my mistakes, but still I have found I may stumble and fall, but through it all, God is still good. Notice there's no comma after all, so it's but through it all, God is still good. Mercy still flows from the palm of His hand. He will give grace and help me to stand. Oh, my voice teacher in college used to fuss at me for doing what I just did. I said grace. She said, I always want to add an extra syllable into words. Good night. I do that so much. I do it so often I catch myself. It's supposed to be like this. He will give grace and help me to stand. But I want to go, He will give grace and help me to stand. That's just the way I do it. I used to drive her up the wall. You'd be like, Ryan, stop that. I was like, I'm sorry. Do it again. He will give grace and help me to stand. And although He knows how unworthy I am, God is still good. Look at the chorus. Ready? God is still good when the waves roll high. You're going to need a breath right there. God is still good all through the night. Now, you can choose to breathe or not. But I have found, me personally, if I take a breath at every punctuation mark in this chorus, I'll be out of breath because I breathed in too much, because I can't get all that carbon dioxide out. So learn not to breathe every time you see the punctuation mark, but learn to phrase it by not singing. God is still good when the waves roll high. God is still good all through the night. When I've done all I can and I don't understand, breath. God is still good. Clouds of doubt may darken the way, breath. But showers of blessings may come any day, breath. He'll bring me through and I'll stand and say, breath. God is still good. So make up your mind where you want to breathe and where you just want to simply phrase a section. Don't sing straight through punctuation marks. They're there for a purpose. Sing the punctuation marks. They're there for a reason. So use them to tell you when to breathe. Use them when to tell you just when to simply stop talking as much. All right, now look at I'm a winner either way. This is E flat. Well, I wish Brother Jerry Sidney was here. This would be one of his favorites, since I believe the Primitives are the ones that really did this one a lot. A loved one knew he'd reached the end of life's journey. He'd been holding to God's hand a long time. As I knelt by his bed, my heart was thrilled at what he said. If I go or if I stay, victory's mine. Okay, so look here. Verse number 1, a loved one knew he'd reached the end of life's journey. You're going to hold that out. Take a short breath. I mean a short one. A loved one knew. I'm sorry, I didn't take a breath at the beginning. Ready? A loved one knew he'd reached the end of life's journey. He'd been holding to God's hand a long time. Breath. As I knelt by his bed, my heart was thrilled at what he said. Take a breath. If I go or if I stay, victory's mine. I wouldn't breathe after stay. I'll just make sure you, right there. But if you're going to run out of breath, you'll learn that as you sing, but you should develop enough breath control eventually to learn to cut it off without breathing, okay? Chorus. I'm a winner either way. If I go or if I stay, I will still have my Jesus each passing day. Breath. I'll have a healing here below. Oh, life forever if I go. Breath. Oh, praise the Lord. Pulse. I'm a winner either way. Should have had a piano player to do it with me. That'd be all right. So let's look back over the course one more time. You don't want to breathe at every single punctuation mark throughout this one, but you do want to take advantage of them and phrase it. I'm a winner either way. Breath. If I go or if I stay. Or you could do it this way. I'm a winner either way. Pause. If I go or if I stay. Breath. I will still have my Jesus each passing day. Breath. I'll have a healing here below, or life forever if I go. Notice I didn't breathe. That's going to be hard. It's going to be hard at first, but you got to do that. It's a phrase. I'll have a healing here below, or life forever if I go. Breath. Oh, praise the Lord. Breath. I'm a winner either way. Okay? Pull out under the blood again. I want to show you something. Look at the second verse. Show you a spot where I like to focus. Second verse goes like this. The prophets of old line the home shores. Breath. Their faith through the ages doth ring. Breath. Now remember, in the first verse, you're not breathing at that same point. Phrase it right, but take that breath. Go ahead, you'll need it. They've waited so long for the moment. Breath. See, in the first verse, you're not going to. The crowning of Jesus the King. Now look at this next line. What do you see a whole bunch of? Oh boy. If you take a breath after every single one of them, you'll black out. But make sure that you accentuate each of those names. It's not supposed to be, when you read it, you don't say, there's Daniel, Elijah, and Noah. They talk of the fire and the flood. That's not how you read it. You would say, there's Daniel, Elijah, and Noah. They talk of the fire and the flood. So when you sing it, don't sing it like this. There's Daniel, Elijah, and Noah. They talk of the fire and the flood. No, no, no. Do it this way. There's Daniel, Elijah, and Noah. They talk of the fire and the flood. Okay? Don't take that breath, but at a very, very minute separation between the names to let them know, hey, there's a list here. We're not just singing and blasting through it. Phrase it right. There's Daniel, Elijah, and Noah. They talk of the fire and the flood. Breath. And if they ask how I made it, I'll tell them I came through thy blood. Now, we'll talk about dynamics later, a little bit, adding volume, things like that. But this would be a good time for you to be like, there's Daniel, Elijah, and Noah. They talk of the fire and the flood. And if they ask how I made it, I'll tell them I came through the blood. They're under the blood. And learn to build your volume, because usually in almost every song, when you get to the chorus, you're going to focus and build until the climax of the chorus. They're under the blood. They're under the blood. Christ did for me what I could not do. They're under the blood. Just like the Passover in Egypt's land, it took the blood to save man. Washed and made clean, I'm justified when God sees the blood. Add variance to it, it makes the story more colorful, okay? All right, so some practice tips for you. If you hang on to these, we're going to use these a lot for the next little while, okay? So keep those. I may add to that stack. Practice tips would be for you to try to sing along with your favorite gospel group on the radio or favorite singers, and hold the endings as long as they do, or try to hold them even longer. There's a lot of songs out there that, buddy, they really hold those endings out, and you're like, I can do it. If they can do it, I can. And then you have to stop and pull over and hack a little bit because you can't do it. It ain't for everybody. Yeah, that's right. You can roll down the window and try to suck some air that way. But it's a good way for you to set goals to learn how to progress. Just like in golf, bowling, disc golf, basketball, whatever. In order to improve, you must play and surround yourself with people that are better than you. If you want to improve your singing, if you're not going to take formal voice lessons from somebody who is better than you are, you should at least learn to sing with people that are better than you are, okay? So that means you need to spend time trying to learn how to hold your notes out like your favorite songs and singers do whenever you hear them on your CD or on your radio, okay? So what I want you to do, I want you to time yourself to see how long you can hold a comfortable note while singing it. And I want you to write down your best time out of 5 tries. So don't try to pick a no, don't try to do that because you'll run out of breath. Try to pick something nice and comfortable, something in the middle of your range like me. You would be like, just try to see how long you can hold it. See, you might just amaze yourself. I do it when nobody's home, though, because you might annoy somebody. Eventually, you'll see a shoe fly across the room. You'll see the dog leave the room, and you hear somebody go, "What are you doing?" "Oh, I'm practicing. Preacher Ryan told me to." Like, well, practice somewhere else. And we don't really know divisions or schisms, especially if your wife's pregnant. That's never. Just give her chocolate-covered pickles and she'll be all right, brother. Amen to God. That's good eating for a pregnant woman, I reckon. Hot sausage dipped in mustard and honey. I don't know. Honey mustard. You get it? That's pretty good. It's not bad. All right. Questions about breathing tonight? Questions about breathing? Anybody? Okay. Very good. Thank you so much for your time. Thanks for your attention. Hope all of you out there that's watching this on the internet and on YouTube that you got a little bit of help about how to sing a little bit better and learning how to use breathing. Review the lesson. Learn to use that big dome-shaped muscle right there in the middle of your abdomen and allow your breath to come out and in so that you can let your lungs expand down like they're designed to. Okay? Thank you. God bless you, everybody. Have a good evening. Thanks for coming.